Welcome to FS-ISAC's podcast, Spin Cyber Today. I'm Elizabeth Heathfield, Chief Corporate Affairs and Communications Officer at FS-ISAC. Intelligence sharing the cyber threats one firm sees with many others, is at the core of what we do. But just because it's in the entire financial sector's interest to collaborate and share this information the same way the threat actors do, doesn't mean it's an easy thing to do. I spoke with Maybank CISO Devinder Singh about the state of sharing in the APAC region and how we can work together to share more. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. So when we discussed what we were going to talk about, the topic that we landed on was the state of sharing in Asia Pacific. And I thought it's a really good topic because, FS-ISAC recently had its 25th anniversary, and intelligence sharing as a concept has been around for the last 25 years or so, but it's more mature in some regions than in others. And let's start with, where you think cyber intelligence and knowledge sharing stands in the financial sector across the APAC region.
In the APAC, we see, of course, the evolution of cyber intelligence, knowledge sharing between the FIs in this region is definitely getting to a maturing state. I think there's been a fairly good progress. But of course, at the same time, there are still some rooms for improvement, right? While we made strides, we were not quite at the level of maturity seen in some other regions, like in Europe, for example. I guess the maturity level there is very, very much different. And of course, there's very much awareness on the importance of cyber threat intelligence sharing given, right? And that's where we've been also promoting internally, and also regulations in this region is also pushing for it. And FIs recognize that collective benefits of having this information sharing across. Now, we see the growth of regional and national level information sharing platforms and communities. And this platform and communities for threat intelligence are becoming more sophisticated, all right? And allowing for automated sharing, analysis, and integration into security operations, that probably will make it more efficient and actionable, right? Now, in conclusion, actually, to be honest, the future in terms of the cyber intelligence sharing in APAC and financial sector depends actually on addressing these kind of challenges. We need to foster a culture of trust and collaboration. I think that's the foremost thing. And then thereafter, investing in technology, which comes with platforms, and then, of course, the skills of development that needs to be done in terms of what are required to be shared, and work towards to come up with a standard framework, or rather a certain set of guidelines, engagement with FS-ISAC and similar organizations, and especially tailored towards the APAC context, is definitely vital, right? Of course, only through collective effort we can effectively and combat and this evolving cyber threat landscape. And I think communication is also one of the key, besides having all the defense tools, the tools in terms of monitoring and triggering. That's from a tool perspective, that's also equally important.
So what kinds of sharing do we see, and what kinds do you not see happening already?
So I guess the types of sharings that we recognize and also we see is that tactical threat intelligence, right? I think those sharing are the most common type of sharing that happens. What involves a little bit of immediate threats from a malware, IOC sharing, phishing campaigns, what are the sender emails and the URLs, and then the TTPs as well. So those we see very, very openly being shared. And of course, the other one is the some of the operational information, such as what are these best practice in the security operations, how can we get better in terms of the response procedures, of course, sharing across in terms of the tools as well, and the best practices, right, from an operational perspective. Now, some of the things that maybe we need to get better, which we don't see much happening, is that breach and incident data. So I guess you will get it eventually, right? But I think it's getting the information up early and and fast. That's the key thing that we're trying to address. Of course, the other one, cross border. I think that's also equally important. We're not just talking in country. I think cross border, not even within one region, but I think cross region. That is something basically we need to foster more. I know FS-ISAC is doing a fantastic job in this. If one region lacks in sharing, it will impact the other region as well. So that's one of the things I think probably we need to go much better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that comes to my mind, um, I'm sure you've heard of the term pig butchering. So, right, and there's a lot of that coming out of the APAC region and going around the world, right? The victims are around the world, and I know that we have done some reports and stuff like that based on some of the member sharing and our intel office, et cetera. But it's a perfect example of a kind of cyber crime that is happening in APAC and is impacting around the world. So it is it requires, right, cross border sharing. What do you see as the barriers, right? So we've talked about the kinds of sharing that we see and that we don't see. What are the barriers, and specifically in APAC, what do you think the barriers are to sharing more relevant and maybe even strategic level information?
I think my thoughts around that will be, I guess it's back to openness, maturity also as well, and of course it varies significantly between regions, countries, right, and even within a financial sector itself, right. Some institutions are very advanced, while others are very on basic or intermediate level as well. And the other one, of course, the concerns of competitive disadvantages, reputational damage, right? I guess if I start sharing with you what I see in my environment, so it has a bit of competitive disadvantage. And of course, the other one is reputational. People start knowing that, if I start sharing a lot, it only gives one perception, right? Oh, this guy is experiencing a lot. I think one of the key areas where organizations as hesitant to share such information is that when they start sharing a lot of this information, they will probably have some reputational kind of impact towards them. One will be thinking that one organization is just sharing a lot. That could also be an impression that that organization does not have a really strong security controls.
So there's the idea of people don't necessarily know, or they may not think it's important enough, and then they may worry that it makes them look like they're not, if they're getting lots of attacks, that their security's posture isn't strong enough, right? One of the things that we spoke about when we first were kind of batting around the topic is the idea of trust, right? You also, if you don't know people, you're far less likely to share. In the US, I know, FS-ISAC's been around for 25 years and it started in the US, and there's a long history there of people meeting in person, at, for example, FS-ISAC summits and in other venues as well. So they build trust over time in person. And then when they see them on a call, it's like, okay, well, we've already actually met, had a coffee or whatever. Do you think that the same applies in APAC, that people really need to, could take years, right? And people really need to meet in person? Or do you think there are ways of building that kind of trust even in digital format, digital platforms as well?
Yeah, I think of course the most traditional way is of course building trust, meeting people, getting to know them, and that has been always been the most effective way in terms of building the trust and getting the trust from one to the other. Now, one of the other things from a technology standpoint of view is, but probably we can build a technology to anonymize the people who are sharing, right? And of course, to build also some platforms will, as the person who's going to share the information, he will feel that the platform is safe enough that it'll keep me anonymous, and at the same time, I won't be known to the outsiders in terms of who's going to share. So those are one of the things that maybe can be looked at. And the other one, I guess, in terms of the principles, in terms of guiding what to share, also can be very, very important. Uh, and you know what, it gives the option that if I want to share, I can either do it openly, to the people that I know and which I build trust, or I can just be anonymous and in terms of sharing those information, and either or, and you know that either or the way that you share this information, it's kind of protected. All right, your identity is protected anonymously. All right, and of course the platform, and it's of course again, you we probably have to also believe on the platform that your identity will be anonymized. That's one of the things maybe we can do additionally than the traditional way.
Mm. What do you think the role is? Well, you're a CISO, right? So, what do you think the role is of leadership? The CISOs and even CEOs and boards and regulators in terms of promoting sharing. I mean, I would imagine that it's in regulators' interest also to help promote sharing, because obviously everybody wants to protect the financial system as much as possible, right? So what would you say the role is of, leadership and regulators in helping to promote a culture of sharing?
Yeah, I think they play a very distinctive role in terms of try to have the interconnected part in fostering this culture of sharing though. And I think it's both internal and also regulators also as well that plays a very, very important role. I think internally in terms of the executive or the board members, right? I think they should recognize that the importance of sharing, right, is across industry, across region, is something that where all industries moving, and that is one of the probably supporting it effective method in terms of addressing this ever growing or evaluating cyber threats. Right now, I think for them promoting that the culture of sharing and commitment from them in terms of transparency, right? We want to build that the communication. We want to also get their commitment in terms of transparency as well. That we're going to give with a certain guardrails in terms of what we're going to share. Is also very important that we get the buy-in from them, right? And if we get the buy-in, we get the support from them. It gives us for the people who's going to share, it will be much more easier, and at least we know that this is something that we have got the agreement, or we got the on board of the senior management and also the board level in terms of their willingness and their acceptance in us sharing this information. That's I guess that's very, very important as well. While regulators, I think function is to be more wider. While you have those financial institutions individually doing the building the culture and promoting the whole transparency. So I guess the other one is the regulators to also promote the interconnectivity between all the financial institutions, right? They need to uh, promote in terms of the value from the information sharing, right? And I guess what they can do is that they can start by leading the practice in terms of sharing the information, right? And then when FIs get information from them, and we feel it's also safe enough to share information with them, and it has to be a certain criteria as also met, because sometimes one will be thinking that if I share too much with the regulators, they'll be coming in front of a doorstep, right?
Yeah.
I think we should get off from that thought in mind. And I think in order to do that, it's to get some understanding, a working level kind of arrangement with the certain areas of team in the regulators that will make you feel more comfortable in sharing information. And I think that will happen vice versa. I think that could be one of the ways in terms of how regulators can also help all the FIs in sharing information. And I think that's very, very important as
Yeah.
well.
One thing you said that I guess I've heard it before, and it's not just in APAC, right? But like for institutions who haven't been doing intelligence sharing for a long time, there's a perception that if they saw a threat and they share that threat, that people will assume that they were impacted by the threat, right? But actually, you could see a threat, effectively mitigate it, and it shows actually how strong your controls actually were. But even just seeing it still could help others who may not have those same controls in place, or have something slightly different and it somehow slid past one thing. So it's almost like there may be some divorcing of the fact that you saw it doesn't mean that you were impacted by it, right? You may have been able to effectively block it, but it still would be valuable for other people to know. And that, I feel like, might be something that we might want to try to correct, right? Because as you said, they saw 10, they report 1, the one that was the least impactful, when actually the most valuable thing to the sector would have been to report at least the most impactful, if not all of them, right? So, but even sharing the least impactful is still helpful, So, I wonder if there's something there in terms of, just because you saw a threat doesn't mean that you were impacted by it. That could help. The other thing that I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about was the knowledge sharing piece, which you mentioned a little bit, right? What did you do? So there was this threat. We did effectively mitigate it. Sharing the security controls that were applied and what you actually went through to mitigate something could also be really helpful for people. And that shows actually, how effective your security posture is as opposed to how ineffective it is. Do you think that encouraging even like the successful mitigation sharing could be a route into developing that kind of trust that we need to be a bit more transparent in general?
I totally agree with you. I guess, I mean, it's not about sharing bad news always, right? I mean, of course, it's all about sharing also the same thing, good news, right? When you get the use of sharing information over in terms of, what you have successfully done, or rather what you have successfully actually detect and you mitigate it, right? Is something that you want to tell people, and you start building the confidence in terms of what you should be sharing. Sharing those basic information will just be helpful, and it will be just becoming more natural, and the hesitation will also reduce as well in terms of sharing, because you are to use you have been sharing all the good news. I think sharing the not good one will be something that, in culture, that that's the best thing to do, that's the right thing to do, and you'll do it with your own principles that you have set, and of course whatever principles the organization have set, you'll be guided that, and you'll be openly sharing. I think that's very important as well.
Do you see a lot of exercises happening cross-sector, across the sector exercises? I mean, one of the things that I participated in a little bit as in my role as the head of communications is exercises that test what happens in the middle of a big incident that impacts, not just one institution, but many institutions. And we do actually quite a lot of that kind of exercising of, okay, well, what do we do? What's the playbook? How do we communicate? How do we share what's going on without compromising any, legal issues or anything like that? Um, does that happen at all, or does that happen enough in APAC? And do you think that there's a role for that to help promote sharing as well?
No, that definitely will help also as well. I think getting familiar with whatever uh, the response plan that we have, and ensuring that we follow the response plan accordingly, it's something that we really need to practice always, right, in order for us to be very familiar. In the APAC region, we do those kind of tests as well. can it be done more? Of course, the answer is yes, right? It probably done once or twice in a year, but I think there might not be enough, right? Because uh, you probably need to practice a lot in terms of uh, the process, in terms of recovery and response, and working with your media partners, and with your external comms people as well.
So if you were chatting with a fellow CISO of an APAC financial firm, and they asked you for some advice on making sure that their teams understood both the value and also the, let's call it, the know-how, like what to actually do in terms of intel and knowledge sharing, what would you suggest they do?
We have a CISO forum, or at least in the Malaysia region, and I know some of the Asia Pac regions also, they have CISO forum. In the CISO forum, so we have created rules, right, in terms of sharing. And that was among the first thing that we did when we built this forum. So there was some house rules that we kind of collectively agreed upon. The sharing among the CISO started off with non-official sharing. All right, pretty much very light work kind of related sharing, right? And then that sharing is basically, in a way, was trying to build the communication, trust, and confidence, in terms of sharing. And then thereafter, as you can see, as we moved along, we started to share more, right? We start to be more open, and of course you may have some different opinions, which is we respect. Everyone, every opinions matters, and everyone feedback matters as well. And we made sure that everyone's very open in terms of giving or receiving, both sides as well. And that actually have developed a very, very good openness, I must say.
If we can overcome some of these barriers, right, with more trust, with encouraging sharing, with giving some effective guardrails, what would a positive future state look like to you in APAC? What would the outcome be?
Everyone wants to achieve this particular state where sharing of information is no longer something to consider. It's a given thing. It's not even an option. It's not something that you will consider. It is something naturally that you do, and that's the right thing. And in terms of sharing between the sectors, between regions, is something that we want to do as globally as well. I think communication is sharing, openness, and trust. I think from a human defense perspective, that's very important. While we might have all the tools, the monitoring, and all the wonderful kind of detection and everything, all that's given. The tools are always going to be there. But I guess from a human perspective, is also a very, very important shield that we need to build, and the interconnectivity, just not systems. Like they say, human is the weakest link, but I think we'll turn around. Later on, I'll say human is the most powerful weapon against cybercrime.